Welcome to Buns, Burgers, and Big Ideas, the go-to podcast for aspiring and seasoned leaders in the quick service restaurant industry. Each week, we serve up actionable insights and proven strategies to help you lead smarter, build stronger teams, and elevate operations. Whether you're taking your first steps into leadership or refining your expertise, we're here to fuel your growth and spark big ideas. Let's dig in.
Stop moving.
I'm sorry. It's not my normal spot.
No, it's not. It's
okay,
not.
everybody, we have a guest, and I'm not in my normal seating position.
No, we switch with our host. Wait, so does that mean you're the host?
I guess today.
Well, I'm sorry. It's like whenever you go to a meeting, right, and you always have like the same seat, right? Like, you know this. You go to school, in the classroom, you're always in the same spot. So lunchroom, right? Somebody takes your spot, and now you don't know what to do or how to sit.
Just don't know how to
I'm
behave.
just like, I'm in it right now. Yeah.
In it.
So
Welcome back, guys.
Yeah. Well, yes. Welcome
to
back.
Buns, Burgers, Big Ideas. We have a cool guest today. This is our first ever guest from our organization. And so we have Miss Hailey Benish here with us.
Hello.
Our employee relations coordinator. And we're super excited to have you and learn more about the ins and outs of your role and what we're doing.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Long-time listener, big-time fan.
We did not pay her to say that, I promise.
However, make sure to follow and subscribe.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What a great opportunity for us to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about what you do with the organization.
Yeah, I have a lot of opportunity to have some FaceTime with our employees, whether that is a new team member or all the way up to the VP of operations and everything in between. So what that looks like on a daily basis, I don't know. It's different every day, which is awesome. It keeps me on my toes. But communication is a big thing. Coaching, I get to do a lot of that.
Sure.
Which is really fun. More on a GM level, I would say, because they're focusing a lot on their team, which is really, really cool to see. So documentation, how to have the hard conversations.
We have an episode about that, kind of.
We do.
Yeah. And then a little bit of training in the shift manager development. So getting them through the program, making sure they're going to LTCs and things like that. So
that's quite the resume that you now have. You started with us, 3 years ago?
Almost to the day, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you started with us, though, you didn't do all of this.
I did not.
Yeah. So how did you progress from like when you started with us to what brings you here today?
Really, the company just allowed me the platform to kind of fall into what I do and figure out what I enjoy doing and also bring my ideas to the table so that we can kind of create this role. And I think it just came naturally. I'm a little bit of a talker, and I say a little bit for anybody that knows me. So being able to have that FaceTime day to day with employees, it just came naturally.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure. Because it really, I mean, you said employee relations, right? And I know you joked earlier before we started recording that your job is to relate to employees, right? But really, I think it all started out even as you being within like the HR realm.
Yes.
So most people don't want to talk to HR.
Right. Yeah. So I was an HR coordinator.
Okay.
Initially, that was my title. And I started getting the scared looks when I'd walk into a restaurant.
Well, sure.
And it was sad, really, because I'm like, why is anybody? I'm not scary. Why are you scared to see me? I'm here for good things, fun things. So we switched my title to employee relations, and that negative connotation in the HR role. I still do the same things, but it's just not that scariness coming
Not
at
that
you.
deep.
Right. Yeah.
But I would agree with the employees, right? Like when I see HR have the like HR's coming, or hey, you know, the office wants to see me, right? Like, I'm going to tell you too, I get nervous as well. So because a lot of your job prior to was, can I just call it more like the firefighting side? Like there were issues, and then you would have to go and address them.
Yeah.
But now it sounds like you're really working, and the HR department is really working towards getting ahead of those issues to prevent them from even happening.
Yeah, we really switched from reactive to proactive. And again, the company kind of allowed me to fall into that role and kind of create what that looks like. And it's just been a lot less stress for me and really fun to see what that does for the organization when we are proactive versus reactive.
Yeah. How did you start getting ahead of that then? Like, I get it. Like, we changed titles and now everyone all of a sudden wants to see you, but I don't think that's how it really happened.
Just to be quite frank,
Yeah.
I started doing a lot of work on myself, and realizing that not everybody has the same ideas as me.
Sure.
And how to take others' ideas into considerations or their opinions into considerations, and how to communicate with people that don't look, sound, think exactly the way I do. Because we can have those same conversations with different people. The conversation might look a little different, but we can still get the same outcome. So I had to learn how to do that, and it started with myself.
Okay.
So that's been a fun journey too.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about journeys on this podcast.
Oh,
Leadership
yeah.
journeys,
Yeah.
your self journey, the growth that you have to go through to become a better leader. And it sounds like this transformation from the one role to this role kind of helped you find out what that journey was and find out those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Prior to your journey, then, would you say you were not as friendly as you? No.
Honestly, then this was the fun thing to learn about myself,
Okay.
right? I thought I was. Or I always say, I would tell people the hard truth. It's stuff they didn't want to hear, but they needed to hear it. And there were some people in my life that would be like, "Oh, you're so mean when you tell me that." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm a nice person.
I'm nice.
I am a nice person. I'm not being mean when I tell you.
I have to tell you this because.
Yeah, right. It was like you just didn't want to hear it.
Sure.
But then it goes to those skills, right? How do I get that same point across, but I can be nicer? So no, I wasn't always as nice and bubbly as I would like to think I am today. So.
Yeah, I think you always were. I think it just took a little bit of time to, kind of get this into the restaurant world.
Yeah.
So I know when we originally talked to you, and I know Riley, reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you on the podcast." And there's a couple things that you wanted to talk about. So, like, what are you trying to get to our listeners today? What would you like them to know?
The importance of accountability and encouragement.
Okay.
Separately, but also together.
Okay. So accountability, what is that to you? Or what do you want them to know about?
So the importance of accountability and what it means to take ownership of results, whether they're positive results or negative results, and how do we continue that behavior, or how do we change it, tweak it, so that we can have those encouraging conversations, celebrations when we have positive results.
For our listeners, what's an easy way maybe they can, what are the things that they should be paying attention to when they are trying to work with their team to get to the point that you just said?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the 4 C's of accountability. So there's clarity, coaching, consistency, and consequences, right? So again, consequences could be a positive consequence or a negative consequence, depending on what the outcome was. But clarity is going to be that first step. So
what does clarity mean when it comes to accountability?
yeah, we want to make sure that we're so very clear in our expectations. And I know that's something that you guys have discussed many times before.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's good to hear different perspectives. I know when I was in the military, they always said it's clear as mud, right? Like that was always like the infamous saying as we were kind of going through some of these things, right? Like clear as mud, and be like, yeah, I don't get it either.
Right.
And so how do we make sure, like, if we're having these clarity conversations and we're looking at things like, okay, how do we avoid the negative consequences in this? How do we really know that somebody's understanding exactly what I'm trying to tell them, right? How do we portray that in a way where it is so clear, right, that it's crystal clear rather than clear as mud?
Yeah, and you actually said it, right? It's good to hear a different perspective. We all have different perspectives. So when I give my expectations, whatever that might look like, for example, cleaning the lobby. If I say, I need the lobby cleaned, and you go, okay, I don't know that you understand what I'm saying, and you probably don't understand what I mean when
Actually asking you, yeah.
Yeah. So I think sometimes the recipient might not feel comfortable asking those clarifying questions.
Yeah.
So my job as a leader, I have the opportunity to open that floor. Do you understand what I'm asking of you? Do you have any questions? Do you know what I mean? For the comfortability to be an option to say, I don't know exactly what you want done. Can you explain in detail?
Well, I think it's so true. We were just at a manager meeting the other day, and we were talking about a topic like that, right? Like, hey, I want you to go clean the lobby, but that means something different to everybody. So, and I'm going to tell you too, everyone right away is like, yes, Eric, we know how to do that. We know how to do that. And then I was like, okay, well, tell me a little bit more about this. And then all of a sudden, nobody's able to or willing to answer. But in front of our bosses, it's really hard to tell us what we do or don't know. So asking those clarifying questions is really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have a different expectation, so.
So as you clarify, so you were talking about clarity and then coaching. So is that like where clarity goes right into the coaching step, or are these just independent of each other?
A little bit of both,
Okay.
I suppose. I feel like the coaching, clarity can be a step of coaching, right? That's how we start our coaching journey.
Okay.
We want to observe what the employee is doing so that we know if they're not meeting expectations, how to have those coaching conversations and what we need to be more clear on, whether that's correcting how a task was done or being just very clear on this is done exactly how I wanted to. So
good job.
please continue
Reinforce
doing that.
Yeah, reinforce that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes we miss the boat on that too in the restaurant industry. Like when things are going well, like we're not very specific, right? Like, hey, nice job, kitchen team, but like, nice job on what? So if we're able to clarify our expectations, then we can coach those expectations, which, like you said, kind of just breeds the accountability piece. Because without good clarity and without proper coaching, how can you really hold somebody accountable? Right. And I think too often our team, and this is probably where HR comes in, right, is when people get frustrated from their leadership or their subordinates, well, they're not doing their job, right? And it's this blame game thing. So to me, what you're talking about, right, from an accountability standpoint is if we provide the clarity and we provide the coaching, then all of a sudden now those next, these C words around consistency and consequences, like everybody's on the same page. So just kind of continuing that conversation, how do we make sure that we're more consistent around this accountability concept?
From an HR standpoint, documentation is a huge way to be consistent.
Okay.
Because it allows us the opportunity to have a coaching conversation when something happens. So if
I go clean the lobby
Yes.
and I sweep and mop, but I don't wipe down the tables or check the drink station, and then you come by and see, oh man,
Of course you didn't.
I know.
Same old Riley, right? And here I am, right, as the boss or whatever, and I'm telling everyone else but Riley, right?
Yep. And honestly, as HR, I see that all too often. And they're so frustrated. And to be honest, I think the coaching conversations can seem wildly out there because you assume that it has to be this huge, long, drawn-out process, when in actuality, it can take you less than a minute to do so.
Yeah.
If you are clear, if you are consistent. So back to the consistency part of it, when we want to make sure that a procedure is done correctly, as a coach, I need to set my expectations, watch, observe it, coach them if needed, right? Give them that feedback, agree on the change so we understand where we're at, and then follow up. And we always miss that follow up.
Sure.
So when they're teaching the next person how to do the procedure or correcting one of their coworkers, the consistency just flows throughout the restaurant.
You say this very naturally, but to a lot of our listeners and even to myself, it doesn't always, and it hasn't always been natural, right? So like, how can we practice some of these things? Because I'm going to tell you, and I know we've talked about that too, right? But like, it's hard to practice things
Role
once
play.
in a while. And the role playing stuff. But like, is that something you do with our team? Or like, how do we honestly put this into practice so we can have better, easier conversations? Yeah,
and actually the role-playing part is something I'm just now getting into because these questions have come up before. How are we doing it? Yeah. It seems so easy on paper. And why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we being consistent? So I am trying to get into the role play with the restaurant a little bit more, and I would encourage them. But again, trying to remember that it does not have to be this long, drawn-out process. It can be, when we're doing fries, this is the procedure, right? A less than a minute thing. and then following up an hour later. It doesn't have to be 3 weeks down the road, and it shouldn't be. It should be a little more consistent than that. But really, it's a short process.
Yeah, and you talked about the consistency, and you talked about the coaching stuff, because it's funny you bring up even like the French fries. Like today, I think I said it like 7 times that we weren't salting the French fries correctly, right? Like
They're shaking.
they're shaking it instead of just pouring it, and it's like, well, I know, Eric, I know. I'm like, cool, but you're not showing me that you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Here's, I guess, my point is it does sound easy on paper, but in the real, so our listeners are in the real world, right, Hailey? And they're gonna be like, yeah, Hailey, you're right. It is easy on paper, but like you're not in the real world, right? Like, you know what I mean? So because everyone does react differently and everybody has different expectations. So how do we get the practical side of this to really make it so easy? And that's where I think people do fail to have these practice conversations, right? Like have the practice conversation with your boss or with somebody else that you know is going to be receptive to the conversation, so that way we can get comfortable, because the more comfortable we are, the easier it is to have that practical application. But some of this stuff is really scary. So for our listeners, when we look to have some of this practical application and they're just kind of starting, like they want to be more of a leader rather than a manager, right? Because what you're talking about with the 4 C's of accountability, the clarity, coaching, consistency, and consequences, good or bad, doesn't come natural to everybody. So as they're maybe looking to start some of this conversation and start having some of these conversations with their team, are there certain things that you would recommend that they do prior to doing this? Because it's really easy to all of a sudden just go to your team and be like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, and now you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where the encouragement aspect comes into that, right? If we are encouraging our teams to hit those times or follow the procedures, reminding them where they can find the procedures, really boosting morale and setting up an environment or a culture that they feel comfortable coming and asking you questions.
Yep.
That's going to be a huge thing that you can do to start off with. And when the accountability conversations have to start, making sure that you're always going into them with the intent to make them better and just being authentic, right? As a leader, we've talked about leadership versus management. As a leader, we want our team to do better.
Yeah.
So that should just be apparent in the get-go of it. But
Well, and people want to succeed, so they're going to want that. If you're giving them that encouragement, now all of a sudden they're already starting to kind of take that ownership, so that when those conversations do happen, now it's a little bit easier for them.
right. And it goes right back to the clarity of it. If you've already set the expectations and they were clear and they know, I missed times because XYZ, when the accountability conversation happens, they're already aware of that. They've already taken the ownership because you set up that culture. Those hard conversations aren't as hard anymore. But again, with the clarity piece of it and having those expectations laid out in a process flow, this is what happened. Here is the result or the consequence. This is what's going to happen next time if this action behavior continues.
Sure.
So they're so very understanding of, if I do this again, this is what happens. And again, those hard conversations just start becoming a little bit easier.
Well, I think what Eric was asking too was more like, what are the restaurant teams doing now? So I know earlier you mentioned documentation. Because sometimes, yesterday I might have cleaned the lobby wrong and you might have coached me, but then you might not see me again for maybe a week. I don't know.
Yeah.
So tell us more about like the documentation part of the encouragement and the coaching.
Yeah, documentation doesn't always have to result in disciplinary. And I think that also has a little bit of a negative connotation hanging over it, right?
Yep.
So there's 3 different types of documentation. We have disciplinary, we have documentation purposes only, which would be a great time to utilize it when we have a coaching conversation. It allows us to see trends and things like that. And then also our accommodations. So when we do have somebody that can hit our kitchen times.
Goes above and beyond,
Yeah.
does something really cool, we can put that in their system. You don't hear about good write-ups much.
Right. We don't. And it's because it's so easy for us to say, well, you did this wrong and we need to do this better next time. Instead of, you really outdid yourself today. Do that every time you come into your shift. And then they can pass that on to the next person.
You were talking about the hard conversations and going into the hard conversations. And what I think you've done a nice job and our organization has done a nice job on is because we've been more clear about the goals, right? Because we've had consistent conversations around what the expectations are. What I've noticed and what I've heard even from our customer relations, employee relations team, right? Because you're relating to employees. What I have found is going into those so-called hard conversations, they're not hard, at least not for the conversation at hand around the results. Now people may take things personally, right? Because we try real hard and there's a personal emotional element to all of this.
Sure.
But the actual conversation around results and the product we produce isn't as bad anymore because we've been so clear on this. And now I have people, and I'm sure you do too, but I'd like to hear a little bit maybe more about it, is hey, I knew this conversation was coming. Right? Like I knew, I didn't do this and I knew that we were going to have this conversation. I knew I was going to get in quote unquote trouble, right? Sure. But I don't think people are getting in trouble. It's just more of that connotation, like you said, of like, hey, they're used to getting in trouble. They're used to documentation being a trouble thing.
Right.
But as you've kind of gone through over the last 6 to 12 months, having conversations with our leadership, with our general managers, have you found that these conversations aren't as bad anymore? Or...
Yeah, I really have. And a lot of times in the beginning, it was, well, I don't want to be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
None of us want to be the bad guy, and you don't have to be the bad guy. So they started setting those boundaries or expectations in the restaurants of, this is what I expect of you.
Yeah.
And it really did turn out when the conversation had to happen. Yeah, I know. They took ownership of the outcome. Yeah, I knew this was coming because I didn't clean the lobby. I forgot or, I didn't get to it, whatever it may be, but they knew it was coming because the clarity piece was set up in the beginning.
Yeah.
And the one delivering the documentation or conversation could also walk away with a little bit of peace, like this is the expectation. They know it. Mm-hmm. They're also not scared going into the conversation. And that's where those intentions are just so apparent at the beginning. You can start pulling people aside. It doesn't have to be this formal thing.
Yeah.
It can just, hey, can I talk to you? Yeah. Because they know I'm here as a coach. Mm-hmm. I'm not here as a judge. So I want to help you be better. I'm going to coach you on how we can be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the bad guy conversation comes when we don't use the 4 C's. So as we're talking to our team and our employees, and I know that we as an organization are becoming more clear, right? We're trying to coach more, but we're not perfect, right? Mm-hmm. Like we have a long ways to go. I think our general managers have gotten a lot better. I think our assistants are starting to grow. But as we kind of progress through our journey, we still have an opportunity to really coach and work with our shift managers, some of our assistant managers, maybe crew trainers as we develop some of that program stuff. So there's still a gap there, right? So like what does happen when we're not using these 4 C's or we're not keeping it top of mind?
Yeah, the morale just not good.
Sure.
Because...
Oh, wait, hold on. I haven't used those before.
That's
I
great.
had to.
Happy to give you the form.
Yes, thank you, Hailey.
Enough said.
And cut. So, the morale just really is not there anymore. They don't feel comfortable asking those clarifying questions when the expectations are being set or not being set. And the goals aren't clear. Mm-hmm. So they don't know what they're doing. They're all willy-nilly and just doing the best that they think they are.
Yeah.
And that sets the general manager up or the shift lead up or the crew trainer up for failure. Mm-hmm. Because if they're not able to coach properly, all steps from beginning to end,
sure,
they're frustrated.
Yeah.
And if we aren't able to hold people accountable, or if people don't feel that they're accountable for the outcomes,
You're not going to get very much performance out of them either.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you just go through the motions at that
Yeah.
point, I would imagine. And I know that we have some folks like that, and those can be really hard people to lead at times too. And I think that's where we got to continue looking at ourselves. You talked about having a journey. We've talked about our journey of management to leadership, and I think keeping the 4 C's top of mind and working on those will help us just become better leaders. And who knows what kind of performance you can get out of somebody when you are a little bit more clear and you follow up and you recognize that follow up. I know I love going in the restaurants and celebrating people's successes more than the failures, right? Because I get it when I walk in, and I'm sure you're the same way, right? It's that we walk in, it's like, oh no, right? They're here.
Warprint's here.
What happened?
How do we get that to be, hey, we're here. Hey, they're here to coach me a little bit more. They're here to make me better. The intent is to make us better. And
This is
I love
awesome.
that.
I have Eric and Riley and Hailey today.
Yeah.
We want them to be like, yes.
I think they were a little scared. Was it last week when we were all there? I was a little scared, but it was awesome because it really was super fun to see all of us back there getting down and
Working with
dirty.
the team.
Yeah. I mean, Riley's making fries, Eric's making sandwiches. I was attempting to do the money, but it was really cool.
Oh, that's why the drawer was short for $30. So.
Hey.
I'm kidding.
But it was really encouraging to see that and to see that from them, that they felt they're going to do this with us.
Yeah.
So we're not there, but we're going to get there together.
There to coach.
Yeah.
So just kind of as we look to wrap this up, because it can be very encouraging, right? Like as our team sets high expectations and we coach those expectations, it's amazing what people can rise to, the challenges that people can overcome and the results that people can get. And I think it's great that we have different recognition programs in place, and it's great that you're more of that employee relations team member right now. So, if you're on our team, reach out to Hailey. Definitely can coach, encourage, and motivate. I know she does it for me. I know she does it for you,
too.
Riley. But what are some of the thoughts, I guess, as we wrap up? Like, what do you want people to really walk away with now? Like, what's those 1 or 2 things?
Don't be scared. Don't be scared to fail. If you do, that's okay. Just learn how to do better next time. Because really, that's what it is, right? I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to have that conversation. You have to practice, and that's the only way it's going to get a little bit easier. Is if you knowledge is power. If you educate yourself, maybe take a look at your own self, right? What can I do? What communication skills can I sharpen so that
To make this easier for myself.
right,
Yeah.
right. How is it going to be not as scary for the other person?
Hailey, I appreciate the words of encouragement. I think it's important to keep coaching the team because you said it in the beginning, right? Not only are you learning, but your intent is to really help others learn and develop and be better at who they are, right? Like become a better version of themselves. And I think looking at ourselves and what we do in order to have some of these maybe clarifying tasks and procedures and questions, because a lot of this stuff, consequences don't have to be bad, and everyone can be on the same page. So I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, teaching everyone how to, what will you call it? Learn, lead? I'm gonna start that over. Learn.
It's okay. What did I tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Learn, lead.
No, listen, learn,
Listen.
lead.
Okay. I was going to say
Listen.
We have to
live.
Listen, learn, and lead.
Yep. So, Hailey, I think it's been great to have you on the team. I'm glad that you wanted to be a guest on or
Yes.
First guest.
first guest, and looking forward to more. And we appreciate you listening today. Just remember, listen, learn, and lead.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you later.
Thanks for joining us on Buns, Burgers, and Big Ideas. We hope today's episode inspired fresh ideas for your leadership journey. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and keep learning with us as we continue to explore leadership in the QSR world. Until next time, take care and lead well.